I used to always feel like I was constantly starting over. It was always like, oh, well, I'll try again next Monday, or I'll wait until after my birthday or Christmas or whatever to start again. And I think that a lot of people do this, and it's usually because, not because they failed, but it's usually because of some sort of like minor setback or, dieting always comes to mind for something like this, where people will have like the best intentions, but then they'll eat a slice of cake or go overboard on their portions or something, and they'll say, you know what, forget it. And it might be, maybe it's like a Wednesday, I'll just wait until after the weekend and start over. And I think that all or nothing mentality tends to really hold us back and keep us from achieving the goals that we were setting out to achieve. Here's the thing: every time that you decide that you're going to start over, you basically erase all of the progress that you've already made. You lose momentum, you probably lose confidence, and you start to feel like you can't ever finish anything, when really it's just like a minor bump in the road. It's not like you completely undid any progress that you had already made. It's just that life happened, something, didn't go exactly as planned, and you've decided that that has completely derailed you. But it doesn't have to be that way. That all or nothing thinking can look like, maybe you miss a workout. Say, for example, I've talked about my running schedule. I run 3 times a week. Well, let's say I missed my workout this morning because it was too hot, or I slept in, or I didn't feel like it, or something got in the way, either, mentally or physically. But if I were to miss that workout and then say, oh, forget it, I'm just gonna, I'll start over again, or dopey training starts at the end of this month, so I'm just going to wait until then to start running again. But I've been running and exercising for a long time, so to like give up like that, or to put it off for so long, can really, negate pro- any progress that I've already made, and that's just not moving me forward. Or maybe you are, trying to lose weight and you're sticking to a nutrition plan, and you overeat, or you eat something, that maybe doesn't align with your goals, and you do the same thing. You just say, forget it. I can't stick to this. And that's where that yo-yo dieting comes from. And I'm only talking about dieting because I've seen this happen so many times, especially when I was coaching people, with their nutrition and their fitness. It really doesn't, like, you have to sort of learn how to ride that wave, because you're not always going to be perfect. And circumstances and your environment are sometimes going to make it more difficult for you to stick to those action goals. And occasionally, it's not going to work out the way that you had planned, but that doesn't mean that you need to completely give up on yourself. Now, if you're a perfectionist like I am, this might be relatable to you. And I think, sometimes I wear my perfectionism as a badge of honor, but it can also hold us back, because if you're expecting things to be consistent and perfect and wonderful all the time, that's just not realistic. And I think most of us know that, but it can be very frustrating when you're really attached to that perfectionism and making sure that everything goes your way, and it doesn't. And that's where I think a lot of us do give up. But it's important to remember that growth is not linear. And maybe you've seen, I've seen memes about that, where it shows like what you expect your journey to be like, and it's like a line that goes up like this, and then it says like what it actually is, and it's like or maybe like a curly cue. But it's so true, because again, with my running, like, I have some really good runs, and I can like build up and go faster, like my pace will continue to get faster, and then I'll have a run. Like, I had a race last weekend, and it was awful. It was so bad. It was really hot. We started late, so it was even hotter than we had anticipated. They didn't have enough water on the course, like stuff like that, and it made it, for a really difficult run. And I definitely was not even close to my best time, and I was frustrated about that. I was like, oh gosh, like, I don't think I want to do any more races for a while. And just, I got kind of negative because it wasn't perfect and things didn't go the way I wanted them to. But that doesn't mean that we give up. I would be not fun to be around if I decided to give up on my running and my fitness because That's one of the things that really helps me to stay grounded, to stay calm, to brighten my mood. It's just fitness is really important to me. So I'm not going to let that get in my way. But years ago, I probably would have because I hadn't figured all of this out yet. I think that the way to overcome this and to not let perfectionism or feeling like things always have to go our way get in the way of actually achieving goals is to reframe it. So instead of saying like, oh, now I need to start over, question like what is the next best step? And I can tell you, typically the next best step is to just keep moving forward with the plan. So if I missed a run this morning, okay, well my next run is on Thursday and I'm just going to keep moving forward with that. It's not a big deal. I've had to do that before when I've gotten sick. I've had to do that before when, maybe like schedules didn't align or something, or maybe I've had to juggle things and shift my schedule around a little bit. But it's really not that big of a deal. And I really haven't lost any progress by doing that. I would lose progress if I gave up or if I decided to stop for a while and maybe, pick it up again in the fall or something like that. But that's not going to help me to achieve the goals that I'm working towards. So, a few tips on how to make this work for you. The first one would be to focus on returning to those actions quickly. So, if you have a schedule set up, awesome, continue following the schedule. If you do miss something, then you can either just continue following the schedule as you had it laid out, or maybe you can juggle the pieces around a little bit and shift things around. But it's so important to remember that consistency is not the same as perfection. Consistency means that you just keep moving and you do what you set out to do most of the time. It doesn't mean all of the time. If you're able to, that's awesome, but most of us aren't. Most of us have things that get in the way. Most of us, all of us, are human and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to stumble along the way, and if we continue to give up every time that happens, progress is never made. I can't remember if I shared this or not in recent videos, but I recently adopted a plant based diet. And so I've cut out all types of meat, I've cut out dairy, eggs, anything that comes from an animal. I'm not eating it anymore. I don't know how long, like, this is another one of those things where I'm like, I'm going to try it for, a set amount of time and see how I feel. That's exactly what I did with alcohol. And I mean, I'm going to stumble sometimes. I already have. Probably, I think within the first week, something that I purchased to eat. It was like a vegetarian burger patty or something. I thought that it was plant based, but then when I got home and looked at it, I realized that it had eggs in it, and I was glad that I hadn't eaten it, but I was kind of like frustrated because I was like, oh, I should have known better. I should have read the label when I was at the store, and I didn't do that. And I did, like, my mind started to spin out a little bit, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, why am I doing this? This is so hard. Now I really have to pay attention to all of this stuff. And I had to just I let myself do that, but I also just had to remember that it was just a little stumbling block. It wasn't that big of a deal. And, I just kept moving forward. Like, stuff like that is going to happen. I can make a great piece of content that I'm really proud of. Maybe I make a video or, create a post or one of my blog posts or essays, and I can work on it for a really long time and be really proud of it and think like, oh, this is really going to have an impact. And then I post it and no one comments on it, no one sees it. I get like hardly any views, and it's like, wah wah, and it's frustrating, but I'm not going to give up because I set out to do this. And I know that, sometimes I'm going to have content that really resonates or that gets, the algorithm pushes it out to everybody. And then other times I'm going to post something that I think is really awesome and it just doesn't land. And if I were to give up every time that happened, I wouldn't be making this video right now. The next tip that I would offer is to create a minimum standard for yourself. And what I mean by this is that something is better than nothing. Maybe I'm really not feeling well, but I don't want to completely skip my workout. So maybe instead of running, like maybe I have a 3 mile run planned. Maybe I walk 3 miles. Maybe I walk a mile, but I do something. And that helps to keep me going and to feel like I didn't completely give up. So, that might be something that you could try as well. Maybe you have decided that you want to start working on a novel and you're going to write 3 pages a day, but maybe you're pressed for time, or maybe your brain just doesn't seem to be like working properly and you're having trouble getting anything out. So maybe instead of the 3 pages, maybe you only write one. It's not a big deal. You're still moving forward. And that is really the most important part, is to continue moving forward. Another mindset shift that I would highly recommend that you try is to stop using your setbacks as evidence of your identity or who you are or what you're able to accomplish. Because if you miss a workout, if you don't write those 3 pages, if you eat a slice of cake when you're trying to lose weight, like that doesn't mean that you can't accomplish what you've set out to accomplish. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're a loser or that you can't stick to anything. It just means that you had an off day, or that, something, life got in the way. And again, that's going to happen. And the more flexible you can become and the more you can roll with that, the better off you're going to be as you work through these action goals to get to your ultimate goal of whatever it is. So, I mean, you don't want to keep looking at like all of the things that, like all of the obstacles or all of the setbacks that you've had, and use that as proof. Instead, flip it and look at, okay, well, I still moved myself forward. I didn't write those 3 pages, but I wrote one. I didn't run the 3 miles, but I walked the 3 miles, and miles are miles. So that's really what I would love for you to take from this, is to sort of like flip that switch in your head. Instead of looking at the negative, look at the positive and use that as your evidence of what you can accomplish. And next, I encourage you to look at the big picture, okay? One day in the grand scheme of things does not have an impact on your overall goal or your ability to accomplish it. It's just one day or maybe one week. But if we're talking about like years of progress, that it's such a small, like little blip. And so if you can kind of reframe it that way, it really does help. Because, I'm playing the long game with my running. It's currently the beginning of June, and I'll be running that Dopey challenge in January. So we're 7 months out. And I'm already thinking about that because it is a long process and it is a significant challenge. And if I have a bad day, or like, I just mentioned the race that I did a couple of weeks ago that was terrible. If I was using that as evidence and I was just thinking about that one day or that one race and thinking that that meant that I couldn't accomplish this, like, no, that's not doing me any favors. And so just keeping in mind that it was just one bad day, and it doesn't define all of my training or what I'm capable of, or whether or not I'm going to be able to accomplish this very lofty goal that I've set for myself. It's not fair to myself. It's not fair to you if you're doing that to yourself, because it basically like negates all of the progress that you're making over that large amount of time, because you're just focused on one day or 1 hour or one week. And I did want to give a couple of other examples, because I know that I do talk about my running a lot, and if you're not a runner, that may not be relatable. So I have mentioned before that I gave up alcohol a little over 4 years ago, and that didn't happen all at once. And first of all, I tried several times to give up alcohol, and I just struggled to really stick with it. And then this last time, I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it for a month. So I wasn't even thinking 4 years or 10 years or the rest of my life. I just set out to achieve it for 30 days. And then after that, I felt so good that I decided to keep going with it. But it was a process. And again, like when I first started, I wasn't thinking like, oh, well, I'm never going to drink again, because to a lot of people, I think that can be really overwhelming, because you start to think about the celebrations and the holidays and the vacations where you're not going to be drinking. And that can kind of seem like, oh, well, that's not going to be any fun. And it's really going to like make things more difficult for me, or like, what am I going to do to unwind at the end of a long day? Like all of those thoughts kind of like go through your head. And so I think that keeping it smaller really helped me, because by the time I got through the 30 days and saw how good that I felt, it didn't seem so overwhelming to think about Christmas without a drink in my hand, or going out to dinner with my husband and not having a glass of red wine. It just, I didn't care so much because I already had the evidence of how good I would feel. So, sometimes you just need to do like the bite-sized chunks and, just sort of like work toward whatever it is that you want to work toward. And another example would be creating this content. Now, I know my videos are not very polished. I know that, when you go to YouTube, like there are some people who have like these massive followings and they have like these really awesome, like video edits and thumbnails and like all this cool stuff that looks really good. And mine is sort of, basic, and that's okay. I'm not like, again, I'm not aiming for perfection with this. I am just trying to get a video out every week, to write an essay that corresponds with the video that I've made, and to create social media content to go along with it. And some weeks aren't perfect. I have never, since I started this at the beginning of January, I have not missed like a long form YouTube video, and I have not missed an essay for my Substack. What I have missed are a couple of social media posts and, reels and posting to my stories. Like it's mostly been around social media, because that sometimes can be a little bit more overwhelming because it's almost like a daily thing, where this is a weekly thing. But it's also easier for me to say, like, well, you know what? If I don't post today, I can post tomorrow. It's not a big deal. And so that's what I've been doing. But, I've made it like a non negotiable. If I can't film on a Tuesday, which is typically the day that I film, I'll film on a Wednesday. I did it last week and it still worked out fine, and none of you knew the difference. So I just think it's really important to, to use this to illustrate that, it doesn't you don't have to take on like this huge, big undertaking, and you can break it down into smaller pieces within a schedule. And if you miss one of those smaller pieces once in a while, you can either make it up or skip it. But if you skip it, that doesn't mean you're stopping. It just means that you're going to keep moving forward. Now, if feeling like you're constantly starting over is something that you want to work on so that you don't feel like that anymore, there are three things that I would recommend that you do. And the first one would be to just sort of look at your life and determine where it is that you find yourself starting over and over again. And that could be, I mean, there's so many different things that we all work on. So, I mean, that could be your diet. It could be starting an exercise program. It could be, looking into going back to school. It could be starting a business. It could be da 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 da. Insert your goal here. But where is it that you feel like you keep starting over? And then think about the progress that you have made so far. Because chances are, if it's something you want, you probably have taken some steps to get there. Um, and really look at that, and then think about what can you do next. So not next week or next month, but what can you do now to keep moving forward? And that might take a little bit of a mindset shift. It might take a little bit of like reconfiguring your schedule, but that's okay. I mean, we're again playing the long game here, and figuring out where you can be flexible and how you can make changes is all part of the process. So, in closing, I really hope that you're seeing that if you have a little bit of a setback, it doesn't mean that you have to wipe the slate clean and start over again. Because when you wipe that slate clean, you're erasing everything that you've already done. And that's really just like discounting yourself. It's discounting the efforts that you've already put in. And you don't need to start over. You don't need to wait until Monday or next month or after your birthday or after your vacation. You can start now and be consistent. But remember, consistent does not mean perfect. So let's say you want to start a new nutrition and exercise program, and you're going on vacation in 3 weeks. So you start now, and then on your vacation, you might find, like I did with giving up alcohol, that you're feeling really good and you don't want to stop. And maybe not yet, but you can still maybe take some of the things that you've done and learned over the previous 3 weeks while you're on vacation, and maybe you just tell yourself, well, you know what, I'm not going to like stick to a hardcore plan this week, but I am going to make sure that I get a large serving of veggies with every meal, or I am going to make sure that I drink a certain amount of water every day, or I am going to make sure that I go for a walk every morning before we start doing vacationy stuff. So you see what I mean? It doesn't have to be perfect, but you're still moving forward. And then when you get home and your vacation is over, you get right back to what you had been doing before. And that is how we build momentum. That is how we stop starting over and over again. So I really hope that this was helpful to you. If you liked this video, please make sure that you follow my account. If there's anything that you'd like to share, if this brought anything up for you, please leave comments below and I'll respond. And if there's anything that I can ever help you with, if you have a specific goal that you're working toward and you keep getting stuck, let me know. And, sometimes it can help to have another person to kind of bounce ideas off of. And I love to do that. I'm happy to do that. So please leave comments if there's anything that you think I can help with, or if there's anything that you would like to share.